Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive in?
Always.
Awesome!
Yeah.
So you guys sent us this piece, I'm the Enemy Within, by Rudolph Okonkwo.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one.
It's an opinion piece. And it is strong. From the very first line, it just grabs you.
Definitely makes the statement.
It does. I felt like I was stepping right into the middle of an argument.
I can see that.
So Okonkwo, he starts with, I'm Trump's enemy within. Lucky you if you are not one of us.
Wow.
What do you think about him using the word enemy like that?
I mean, it's a powerful word, right?
Yeah.
You don't miss it. He's not trying to be subtle.
No.
It's like he's drawing a line
Yeah.
right there. And it really makes you think about how language can be used, to divide people.
It's very us versus them, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something we see a lot, unfortunately, in politics especially.
And it's not just a one-time thing. He keeps going with it. Like later he says, maybe you are not one of us today, but you will definitely join our ranks tomorrow. It is just a matter of time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's not even a choice, really.
It seems like he's saying everyone's going to have to pick a side eventually.
Interesting. It makes you wonder if he thinks that kind of polarization is inevitable.
Right. And what happens then?
Well, that's a big question. And it reminds me of, other times in history when this kind of thinking took hold. And it usually doesn't end well.
It makes you think. So moving on, Okonkwo also talks about the military and how Trump, he says, wants to use the military against his opponents.
I remember that.
But then he also says the military is committed to the Constitution, not to any one person.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction.
It is. Okonkwo, he says, quote, he will try, but he will not win. Nobody has told him that his power ends where the power of the Constitution starts.
It's interesting because, well, on paper, that's how it's supposed to work, right?
Oh, right.
But history shows us it can be a lot messier, the relationship between a president and the military.
So there have been times when it's not been so clear-cut.
Oh, definitely. There have been some real gray areas, times when the military has been put in a really difficult position, having to decide where their loyalty truly lies.
You're making me think about, like, Watergate or even the Civil War.
Exactly. Those are prime examples where the military had to weigh these competing loyalties to the president versus the Constitution and figure out, what was the right thing to do.
That must be such a heavy burden.
It is. And it really highlights the complexity of this idea that the military can always be a check on presidential power.
Yeah, it's not as simple as it sounds.
And it makes you realize that Okonkwo's statement, it's more like, it's more of a hope than a guarantee.
I see what you mean. Okay, let's shift gears a little. Let's talk about immigration. Okonkwo brings it up, and it's clear it's something he feels strongly about.
For sure. He mentions Trump's negative comments about immigrants from different countries.
Right, and he specifically names Haiti, Congo, Venezuela, and Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and he really connects it to his own experience, too.
He does. He says, quote, I'm on Trump's list of those poisoning the blood of America.
Wow. Strong words.
It feels very personal. Like he's putting himself right there with all these other groups who've been targeted.
It's a way of personalizing it, right? Making it real for people. And it taps into this fear of the other, which has been a recurring theme throughout American history, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like especially during times of, economic uncertainty, you see a lot of scapegoating of immigrant groups.
Like blaming the outsider.
Exactly.
And then Okonkwo, he uses this amazing metaphor. He says, he will try to separate the air we breathe in and out from the stream of American air, but the air will not obey him.
I love that line. It's so powerful.
It is. What do you think he's trying to say there?
I think he's trying to show how ridiculous it is. This idea of dividing people based on where they're from. We all breathe the same air. We share this planet.
It's like he's saying we're all connected, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. And those connections, they run deeper than any political rhetoric.
Yeah. But he's not just talking about Trump as a person, right?
Right.
Okonkwo seems to see him as part of a bigger pattern.
Oh, definitely. Like he calls Trump a recurring phenomenon.
Yeah. Like this has happened before.
Yeah.
And it'll probably happen again.
That's what he seems to be saying. He talks about these figures who emerge during times of, significant national changes and social and economic distress.
Which is kind of unsettling when you think about it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're really making progress as a society or if we're just doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over.
So are we just stuck?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Okonkwo, he does offer a glimmer of hope. He talks about the future, and he makes this prediction. He says that in 100 years, the children and grandchildren of the Haitian people will become governors in Ohio and presidents of the United States of America.
Wow. So he's imagining a very different America.
He is.
Yeah.
One that's more inclusive, where the people who are being marginalized now, their descendants will be the ones in power.
That's a powerful vision.
It is. And it speaks to this belief that progress is possible, even amidst all the challenges.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. He's saying don't lose hope. Things might be tough now, but change can happen. It's just going to take time.
An effort, probably.
Absolutely. It's interesting how Okonkwo, he really takes ownership of that word enemy.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
It's like he's saying, if standing up for what I believe in makes me an enemy, then fine, I'll own it.
He's definitely not shying away from it.
And he's not just saying it, he's like backing it up with these really strong images and metaphors.
Right. Like when he says, Trump's trying to separate the air we breathe.
Exactly. It's such a powerful way to get that point across. Like how absurd it is to try to, divide people based on where they're from.
It's such a visual image.
It is. And it makes you think about how language can be used to, shape how we see things. How we talk about immigration, for example.
Oh, for sure.
Like, think about all the words you hear, like invasion or flood.
Yeah.
Those words, they create a certain feeling, right?
Yeah, they definitely evoke something.
Fear, anxiety. And that can really influence how people see the issue. It's like once you become aware of it, you can't unhear it.
It's true. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and it makes you really pay attention to the words people are using. What are they really trying to say? What emotions are they trying to tap into?
And then it makes you think about, okay, how can we actually have a conversation about this? A productive conversation.
Right, because it's so easy to just get pulled into that, that us versus them dynamic. And then it's just like shouting matches.
Or nobody's listening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we move beyond that? I think it starts with being aware of it, right? Recognizing the power of language.
So being more mindful of the words we choose.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And also being, open to understanding where the other person is coming from, even if we don't agree with them.
It's about having empathy.
Exactly. Trying to see things from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always easy, but I think it's essential if we want to bridge these divides. And it's not just about language, right? It's also about understanding the context, the history.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like with immigration, for example. You have to consider the long history of immigration in the U.S. and the economic factors and the cultural anxieties that come up. It's complicated.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. You can't just focus on the individual words. You have to understand, where they're coming from. What are the forces that are shaping these debates? It takes critical thinking.
We have to be able to, sort through all the noise and figure out what's actually going on.
Exactly. And that means being open to different perspectives, even if they challenge our own beliefs, and being willing to, engage in conversations with people we might disagree with.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. And that's how we hopefully start to build some common ground.
And that brings us back to Okonkwo's piece, right?
It does.
Because even though he's making this really, strong critique, he also seems to have this sense of hope for the future.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't give in to despair.
Even when he's talking about some pretty dark stuff, he still believes things can get better.
Exactly. Remember that line about Haitian descendants becoming governors and presidents one day?
Oh, yeah. It's pretty amazing. What makes him so sure about that?
I think it speaks to his belief in the possibility of progress. Even amidst all the challenges.
Yeah.
He sees a future where things are different, more inclusive, more just.
So what can we learn from that?
I think it's a reminder that, change takes time. And it's not always easy, but it's possible. And it's worth fighting for.
So even when things feel bleak, we can't give up hope?
Exactly. We have to hold on to that belief that things can get better. And then we have to work towards making it happen.
And that's where we all come in.
Absolutely. Each of us has a role to play.
Whether it's through our words, our actions, or even just, our belief in a better future.
Exactly. Because those beliefs, they have power. They can inspire us to act. And they can help create the future we want to see.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to ask you, the listener, what are your thoughts on all of this?
What resonates with you the most? What questions do you have?
Because we've covered a lot of ground, but we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to unpack in Okonkwo's piece.
And I bet you have your own insights and interpretations.
So take some time to think about it.
And we'll pick up the conversation in the next part of our deep dive. It's amazing, right? How one piece of writing can make you think about so many things.
It's true. Okonkwo really gets you going, thinking about language and history and whether or not things can actually get better.
It's a lot, and it makes me wonder, like, how would this piece land if it were written today?
Oh, interesting, like in 2024.
Yeah, it was published a while ago. Things have changed. So much has happened.
You're right. A lot has happened.
Would he be, like, more hopeful or less?
Well, the main ideas, about language and immigration, they'd still be relevant. But the examples,
Yeah.
he'd definitely have to update those. And his tone might be different, too.
Thinking about everything that's happened.
Right.
Would he still think things are headed in the right direction? I'd love to hear his take on, like, social media.
Oh, for sure. He'd have a lot to say about that, how it's changed the way we talk about politics. And not always for the better. The misinformation. The echo chambers.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It is. And I bet he'd have some thoughts on, the events of the past few years, the pandemic, the political devise.
It's like the piece is a snapshot of a moment in time, but the themes are still so relevant today, it makes you think about how future generations will see us.
I know, Ray. What will they think?
It's kind of humbling, like we're all part of this big unfolding story, and we're writing it as we go.
That's a great way to put it. We're all part of history in the making.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into I'm the Enemy Within, I hope you found it as thought-provoking as we have.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I think Okonkwo's piece is a really important reminder that language matters, that history has a way of repeating itself, and that hope is essential if we want to see real progress.
And I hope it inspires you to keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep engaging in these important conversations, because that's how we make sense of the world, and that's how we move forward.
Well said. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, happy diving!